Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. It's an honor to be here today talking about my volunteer work with Casa Mariposa on behalf of all migrants who want to immigrate to the United States. Maybe some aspects of my talk today would be hard to accept and hard to hear. May the Great Spirit soothe our senses and always keep us focused on the power of love that is stronger than the evil being done. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. Some of us know the mouth of a shark, and some of us don't. Some of you may have seen it through the Vietnam War or the war against Iraq or even previously. In the 70s, I saw the mouth of the shark through my experiences in Chile. During street disturbances where I was sprayed with tear gas. And later on, I saw my small family in the US being threatened with deportation after a military dictatorship had been established in Chile and we were unable to go back home. Some of us have seen it in the eyes of our students when their parents are no longer with them. They have been taken away, deported, jailed, or disappeared crossing the desert. Through my experience with the New Sanctuary Movement for Rosa that went on in 2014 for 15 months, in which Pastor Ron Ferris and some of you actively participated, I was left needing to know more about these experiences of separating families. In the words of Tara Brach, I'm going to say something important. Quote, most of us would say that the world is increasingly divided, hostile toward those who are different or who think different from us. There is a rampant sense of unreal other, of not experiencing the other as a real thing. If someone is an unreal other, then we can violate them. We can sustain the sense of unreal other only as long as others are at a distance. But as soon as we approach them, we sense their vulnerability. To heal the separation, we need to be with each other, talk with each other, and get to know each other. End of quote. So I joined Casa Mariposa. I have been part of Casa Mariposa, Eloy Detention Visitation Program, for almost 4 years. We are a ministry of presence where we offer friendship, company, relief from isolation, connection with family members, monetary help with phone calls, books, and post-detention financial help. Our work matches your value of building the beloved community and the goal of having a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. During the holidays, we wrote more than 3,000 cards with a message of love and companionship to those in jail. Thank you, Sherry and Alan Desmond, for hosting a card writing gathering in your home, and also for sponsoring Amparo. Eloy Detention Center is a private prison located in Eloy in Pinal County, Arizona, owned and operated by Core Civic, formerly the Corrections Corporation of America, under contract with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, commonly known as ICE. Basically, it is under the rules of Homeland Security and directly affected by Trump's orders. This is part of the conglomerate of more than 250 immigration detention facilities throughout the U.S., many of them for-profit institutions. When we hear of the need for detention centers due to the situation in our border with Mexico, one can't help but ask, if this is only a border issue, how come there is such an amount of detention centers all over the country? Have it very clear that these detention centers are all being paid with your taxes. I visit immigrants, men and women incarcerated at the Eloy jail, and also occasionally immigrant men incarcerated in La Palma, which is only for men and is just located behind Eloy Detention Center. Eloy is located about 55 minutes from Tucson on the way to Casa Grande ruins. There have been several cases of suicide at Eloy and attempted suicides, besides hunger strikes. The warden praised our work, saying that we are a positive force keeping people from wanting to end their lives. Yet, that same warden does not control well his officers, and some of them are plain abusive. Furthermore, I was told of a case of a woman who jumped from the second floor to the first floor, and she survived. After she came back from the hospital, she was put in the hole. The hole is an isolation cell where they punish you. This was to deter others from trying suicide. The same thing can happen if you cry too much or you appear depressed. You end up in the hole. In this cell, you sit on the floor, it's cold, you do not bathe, you have nothing to do and no one to talk to. And there have been multiple, thousands of reported cases of physical mistreatment by the Border Patrol and ICE. And this, my friends, is also the mouth of the shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. When we have left such important parts of our lives behind, so far away, such as children, babies sometimes, parents, sick or elderly relatives, and have been stripped of all material possessions, at the end of this journey of survival, you find yourself in an aggressive, restrictive, and even dangerous place. What flourishes in you is a new meaning of hope and patience. Yet this hope often takes root in the belief that God is orchestrating this situation and is pulling the strings in uncertain ways. Si Dios lo quiere, Dios sabrá cuándo, as God wants it, or God knows when. Many lessons are learned of humility, patience, generosity, solidarity, and a fierce kind of strength appears behind the bars. We walk on sacred ground on that place. Stripped of all distractions, of all material comfort, together with them we experience a pure sense of humanity, and that nurtures us, giving us both, them and us, strength to continue ahead with our lives. We enter through these doors, and we go through different levels of doors that we must wait to be opened for us. We take off our shoes and jackets and set those and our car keys on a bin that goes through the X-ray machine. No phones allowed, and several restrictions about clothing, shoes, and no jewelry. Inside the building, the first thing you notice is the cold air, which freezes your bones. We must be there at 7:30 a.m., and after we pass through the X-ray machine, we are allowed to enter another room, wait for the door to open again, and go into the visitation room. We sit on chairs separated from our friends by a narrow table with a wooden separation. Touching is not allowed. I made this drawing during a visit. These are the 3 girls, all American citizens, that I took to visit their mother, who ended up there for 2 years. We can hug at the start and at the end only, and babies who are brought sometimes on weekends to visit their mothers cannot sit on their laps, causing hysterical cries most of the time. We look into each other's eyes across the wooden table, listening with heart ears, sharing the present moment, and we together feel the dance of hope, at least for a moment. And that is a gift for us, the visitors at Casa Mariposa, the true gift of shared humanity, vulnerable and also transcendent. In US, there is immediate mandatory detention, incarceration of asylum seekers. It doesn't matter if you enter through the border gate with all your papers and documents, or if you were arrested in the desert. Everyone is first taken to ICE detention, which sometimes may last for weeks, but usually about 5 days. You are processed and then sent to detention centers. This summer, some people were detained, sent to Texas, where they spent two months in tents. At Eloy, there are folks from all over the world, but the main countries represented are Haiti, the Central American countries of Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. Many African countries like Congo, Cameroon, and Togo. Countries like China, India, and recently many people from Cuba and Venezuela. Casa Mariposa volunteers are allowed to visit on Fridays. We each have 5 friends that we visit, and we will keep on visiting them until they either win their case and come out, or they pay their bond and come out, or they are deported, which is the norm usually. Beside us, who come from Tucson, under the umbrella of Casa Mariposa, ICE allows other groups to come also. There are volunteers that come from Phoenix, such as Transcend, who serves the LGBTQ community, Guadalupe Presbyterian Church in the Yaqui Reservation, Haitian Ministries, and a few volunteers from a Baha'i community housed in Eloy itself. After we get to know each other and bond with each other, they tell me terrible stories. These countries are havens of natural beauty and even great places to travel to do tourism. Yet, in this suffering population, there is widespread sexual abuse of girls by their family members, neglect and violence by their parents, by their communities. There are gangs, rapes, murders, shootings, violent husbands who beat their wives, extortion, drug lords in power, young men forced to join gangs, political oppression, extreme poverty and narco-trafficking, and all of this with minimum response from police forces and without protection from the law in most cases. In fact, the police in some areas are afraid to intervene or are themselves connected with this delinquency. The worst cases I have encountered come from Honduras and Guatemala. The boy you went to school with, who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory, is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burned threads into your neck. The detention center that houses about 1,300 people on any given day has courts inside. The Eloy Immigration Court falls under the jurisdiction of the Office of the Chief Immigration Judge, which is a component of the Department of Justice's Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR. At the moment, there are 4 judges active in Eloy. When a person is first processed by ICE, they're interviewed for what's called credible fear to return to their countries. Once that has been approved, they start the process of court hearings to hear the charges the government has against them, to fight their case in the courts inside the facilities, or to get a bond and leave detention to fight their case outside. We have seen bonds go up to $83,000. Women who are pregnant get lower bonds, usually $2,500, as it was the case of Carmen here, who left and stayed with me for 2 days before reuniting with her father in the Northeast. This process takes months or years if there are appeals. These mandatory detention rules are also contain fixed quotas as to how many people should be deported each day. This is used as a deterrent, yet it is not working. The great majority of immigrants have never committed any crime, and they will continue to search for a safe place from the mouth of the shark, confusing the United States with that safe harbor. If a judge decides that to give asylum to a person, the government's prosecutor, who is always present at the hearings, would most probably object and reserve the right to appeal, having 30 days to decide whether to appeal the ruling of asylum or just let it be. This means that the person who obtained asylum from the judge has to wait 1 more month in jail and could lose the asylum if the prosecutor fights for its dismissal. I've known cases like that. Many asylum seekers who leave detention are forced to wear an ankle bracelet, which costs between $200 and $300 a month for the immigrant to pay to the government, placing an almost impossible burden on them and their sponsors. To have a lawyer representing you is of great importance, but adding to this dismal situation, there are several immigration lawyers who charge high fees and do the minimum, so immigrants are prey to these lawyers, provided they are able to collect enough funds from family members to pay for them, which very few times happens. Besides a handful of empathetic and considerate lawyers who offer pro bono services, the only pro bono or free legal service that is officially offered to them comes from the Florence Project. If you do a search on ICE about pro bono lawyers in Arizona, it's an empty page, and the only thing that appears is the Florence Project. But there are very few lawyers in that organization, and they have an average of about 3,000 cases. So they only take the worst cases and the ones that they know that will probably get asylum. They also are interested in the immigrants knowing their rights, so they do presentations to them called Know Your Rights. Most folks have family or friends already here in the US who act as sponsors for them. Nevertheless, many come without knowing a single person here. If you don't have a sponsor, you will not be eligible for a bond. Personally, at this moment, I am sponsoring Digna from Guatemala. A sponsor must have a green card or be naturalized or a born citizen of this country. He or she becomes a legal entity who offers the immigrant a place to live and to survive while out of jail. Many times it is only a legal form because someone may be sponsoring in Los Angeles and the person will have already plans to go and live somewhere else in the United States. But it might happen that somebody may end up living with you indefinitely. The need for sponsors keep coming up. It's a true opportunity to participate in solidarity and collaboration with someone trying to obtain asylum. When Jemima from Honduras, whom we call Mima, and we became friends for life, the mother of the 3 girls you saw before, when she left after 2 years in Eloy, because several churches collaborated in paying her $17,000 bond, which the judge gave her after almost 2 years of a legal battle, we stopped in the desert and lit a candle and prayed. She was able to reunite with her 3 girls after all US citizens who had been living at that time with a neighbor in Indiana because their father had been murdered in Honduras. And here they are at the actual house called Casa Mariposa. I didn't have enough time here to talk to you about the actual house because it exists, but our program doesn't have a house. As we are present with our brothers and sisters in jail, huge transformations are happening inside of all of us. As we try to preserve the dignity of those migrants, we are also preserving our own dignity. We feel such joy, such connection, such privilege to be able to join in their struggle and be part of their lives. They teach us lessons we couldn't have learned anywhere else. Flor, a trans woman from Honduras who wants to live as a man now, told me, I left with nothing. No money, no extra clothes, no food, nothing. I was escaping drugs, sexual violence, a life that had dragged me to despair, abuse, and abandonment. I jumped on the trains. I traveled in La Bestia, the beast. There I found God. He protected me, filled me with love, encouraged others to share their food with me. I saw assassinations, people with limbs cut off, organ theft on corpses, rapes. But I was well. I had like a wall of protection from my God. My soul went to Him, and I gave Him my being, my entire soul. Now, nothing but Him is important to me, and I know that I will be fine, no matter what the circumstances. I needed to go through this to find Him, to find the true love of my life, and I am so thankful. At the moment, there is a GoFundMe in progress to pay her bond of $12,500. And then we have the separation of parents from their children, imposed by Trump in 2018 as a tough deterrent for non-documented immigrants, like what Tom read to us. David Torres puts it this way: those who devised this entire anti-immigrant scheme acted with perversity, acting consciously with evil and enjoying it. The current US government found that the intention of these officials was, in reality, to separate more than 26,000 young immigrants from their families. That, of course, without any idea for how to administer data, how to channel the bare minimum toward their health care and feeding, without taking into consideration the crisis that would be unleashed, much less how to contain it. Hundreds of children have now been found to have suffered sexual abuse in the hands of their guards. For that reason alone, this very perversity must be classified as a crime against humanity, for which someday those responsible for this complete barbarity will be held accountable, I hope. The recent ruling sending those processed by ICE back to Mexico is another inhumane way to deal with this crisis. When they arrive back in Mexico without shoelaces, they are immediately spotted by the drug mafia and extorted and abused. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of the gun, and no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs, leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. And once a year, we gather outside of Eloy jail to protest this inhumane treatment of asylum seekers, the criminalization of immigrants, and the abuses of our court system where they have no defense. Together with multiple other activist groups, we gather in the desert area outside the jail on Hannah Road in the evening and share speeches, music, poems in preparation for the candle vigil once the sun has set. Then we communicate with them with light and voice. We literally yell at the top of our lungs, "No están solos! You are not alone!" And we cry when we see them answering with blinking lights from their cells, which they do by covering and uncovering their windows with their blankets. Perhaps you can be part of that celebration and demonstration this year, 2020. I have come to the end of this presentation, and I'm sure that you are already playing a big role in resisting and fighting for human rights and for love of humanity. But I also wanted to let you know of several ways in which you can have an active part in the ministry of Casa Mariposa. There is a great need for sponsorship of incarcerated immigrants. Without sponsors, sorry, I got a little behind. That's what happens that night. Without sponsors, nothing in the courts can advance. A sponsor produces a letter saying to the judge that you will provide basic needs for that person once out of detention. There is a need for temporary shelter also in a home and family atmosphere, perhaps for a few days when they leave the jail and get ready to join a family member or a friend in another state. There is also a need for accompaniment during court hearings, which means that you go and sit in the courtroom during their hearings. Anyone with a driver license can come in and attend court. There is a tremendous need for money to pay bonds. If the asylum seeker wins his or her case, that bond money is returned. Casa Mariposa does not have funds for bonds, but we receive donations to send them money for phone calls, buy books for them, give them money for post-detention needs, and we also buy them clothes when they're about to depart from jail, because most of the time, the clothes that they came with have been shredded, stained, they're too dirty or moldy in these plastic bags where they keep them. And the objects shown up front here were made by incarcerated women and men, friends of mine. They gave me these things, which they made out of garbage, using the inside of cereal boxes sometimes, or plastic bags that they shred and make and weave, or color paper that sometimes are given to them, and completely transforming these objects into works of art and on works of the heart too. And one time I asked them, what do you use for glue? And they told me, we soak tortillas and make a paste that is pretty good glue. Peace to you and to all beings, and peace to Mother Earth. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.